Hello there and welcome to Tom's Warhammer Minis. Festus the Leech Lord is back in a brand new and incredible centrepiece sculpt. Now, already on my channel is the tutorial for his original model, and in this guide I'll showcase my take on the new version using a mixture of colours from the original scheme as well as the new scheme we see on the box art. I'll guide you through how to add additional features to make the centrepiece look grander, as well as adding some more advanced technical details to make this model truly competition and cabinet display worthy. It's a big guide, lots of different colours and a very rewarding finish. So grab your paints and brushes and let's go. And we're beginning with Festus the Leech Lord. I'm really looking forward to this one. It is a fantastic centrepiece model. Potentially, who knows, it's too early in the year to say, but very potentially a model of the year. Now to begin with, we've got some important things to note. The model is fully 100% assembled. It is primed completely in white scar. I have applied Sterling Mud as a texture paint to the base already. Essentially, there's a lot of tough areas that are going to be sort of in place to get to. Better to do it now. We can put tufts, we can put slime, we can put all sorts to cover up any painting mistakes should that happen. But equally, it means we haven't painted the model and then we're not spoiling it afterwards. If we do make mistakes, we can clean it up and fix it at the beginning, which is the easiest part to do. So, with that out of the way, we have one final thing to mention, and that is there's quite a few little additions you might have spotted, you might not even be aware, that I've added to this model. Essentially, this is Festus the Leech Lord. It is 100% that model, but I've added in a lot of Nurglings, which are available in the Nurgling kit. Essentially, when you build the Nurgling sprues, you get all these little additional side ones that you can stick on top of the main bundle, or you just leave them separate and stick them on other bases, and they fit absolutely perfectly. So I've got a whole motley crew of them littered around. They absolutely stand really neatly on the sides of those blank areas of Festus's platform. So that's in addition. They'll be included within the painting tutorial, and let's get cracking. So we're going to take Festus section by section. Essentially, I'm going to do the slug, we'll do Festus, we'll do the carriage and equipment. Nice and simple. So, with that in mind, we're focusing on the slug first. We need that underbelly colour, and it's nice and simple. We want a good sickly tone, and the colour here is Aggaros Dunes. I am adding Lahmium Medium to this. This, however, is not a ratio. This is literally just a drop, just to help the flow. I want its natural colour. Now, this is the underside of the model. Some of it is covered up because of the Sterling Mud, and that's okay. That's not a problem because you're not going to be able to see it anyway. But essentially, you've got this top section, anything underneath, it's quite obvious. Just use the box art as reference. That's all I'm going to say. What we are going to do when we get to this section here, obviously this bit is green. We have a natural blend that's going to happen. So I've painted it roughly just where my finger ends, up to there. Wash my brush, and while it's dry, we're going to do something called feathering. So contrast paints break down with water. It literally disintegrates the paints. So with a damp brush, so paint it on, get it damp, obviously wash it, clean it, not sodden but damp, just pour the paint outwards towards where the green's going to be. Essentially the water's going to break down those molecules, and as you can see, it just weakens the colour so significantly. It's going to help create a natural blend. Essentially when I paint the green, I'm going to do exactly the same. I'm going to paint it where my finger ends and literally feather it out so we've got this perfect transition. Do the same on that side. And then for the entirety of the mouth, I've just painted it in. It is going to be pink. Don't worry about that. We're going to have two different shades of pink. That sort of real dark Sigvuld Burgundy on the inside of the mouth where my finger is. And then the outside is going to be a very lighter Volupus Pink. But having this as an under there is just going to add to the effect. So take your time, get that done. Let it dry completely. And then we'll move on to creating our green skin tone. Next up, we are going to base coat that green all over the slug skin. Nice and simple. This is one coat. We are doing a mix, but it's just one single coat and you've got the entire colour in one hit. It is really easy to do. So let's talk colours and theory and why we're doing it in a way, and then I'll talk about application. So it is going to be a ratio of 4 parts. In that 4 parts, we're going to take 1 part of Gutrippa Flesh. We're going to add 2 parts of Creed Camo, and then we're going to add 1 part of Lahmium Medium. Now, that is the 4 parts, so To begin with, let's explain why, just to give you a kind of idea of how contrast paints work. Creed Camo is not a great green for organics in that sense. It's great for cloth, great for buildings, not for skin tone. That's why we've got the Gutrippa Flesh. That's a skin tone colour. But it's too bright. We need that darkness that we see on the box art, and that's where Creed Camo is the most matching colour. However, by mixing it with the Gutrippa Flesh, you get the best of both. You get the darkness, and that's where the 2-part ratio comes into this, and then the 1 part of organic flesh just mixes together so perfectly. However, we've got a large, big surface area to cover. That's where the 1 part of Lahmium Medium comes into play. This is going to give you a lot of control as you move the paint around, as well as the feathering aspect. So like I mentioned here, we need to feather it out here. So paint where my finger is, wash your brush while it's damp, feather it out. Both sides, nice and simple. It hasn't got to be 100% perfect because we're going to be adding more paints later on, shades, just to sort of tie it all together. But as near as perfect as you can is good enough. Now, applying this, where I've started here, it's difficult because there's a lot of open area and obviously you want to avoid drying lines. So I've started in this section here. You've got the top body and then you've got this sort of ridged area all the way around. So start in this corner here, bring the paint all the way around this section, following my finger up to the tail, then go around the tail all the way to the other side. Nice and simple. Then I found the best part actually is to start where you've got this section that's holding up the frame. Go to the slight left of it and you've got this long recessed line. Paint it down here, move all the way around the front, going over. Keep an eye for pooling. I've noticed pooling that happens here and here. But bring it round, go underneath, all the way round, etc. Up into the back, and it is easy to reach. It doesn't look it, but it is easy to reach. Do this whole section here. You've got this section of skin that's torn. Just go around this bit, cover that section, start here again, go back to the beginning, and you'll avoid drying lines. It is pretty simple, but the Lahmium Medium will give you a bit of leeway too. So, just as a reminder, that is 1 part Gutrippa Flesh, 2 parts Creed Camo, 1 part Lahmium Medium, and you've got box art looking skin. So, let that dry, we'll move on to the next step. Next up, we're going to add a lot more colour to our slug monster. So to begin with, we're doing the black last. Essentially, we're going to paint the inside of the mouth, and we're not going to avoid the teeth. We're going to paint straight over them in these pink colours, just to make life easier. And essentially, once that's completely dry, we then add the black. There is method to madness, it just makes life easier. So let's focus on the mouth. There are 2 pink tones. This darker pink that we see in the centre, right here, and then this outer edge, which is a slightly more lighter pink. Now, to begin with, let's focus on the epicenter. That's, bit here that's going to be darker is going to be Sigvuld Burgundy in its purest form. Like I said, paint it straight over the teeth. Let that dry completely. Then we're going to focus on the outer edge. And the beauty of adding the Aggaros Dunes as an under layer, this just becomes a bit more fleshy looking, and that was my intention here. So, the colour here is Volupus Pink. Nice and simple. Once again, paint it straight over the teeth. We don't need to worry about avoiding it because we're going to paint black over it later on. With the Volupus Pink to hand, we're doing all these cuts and open wounds. Here, I just really recommend the box art as reference material, but to be honest, it's pretty obvious. So get all of that done, let it dry, because we can't do the black Templar yet, so we're going to move on to a different paint, and this is going to be Kroxigor Scales. This is picking out the pus spots. Now normally I do it in Nazdreg Yellow, but when you look at the box art, it is this turquoisey green, sort of sea green look, and Kroxigor Scales is really close matching here. So I'll do a little sort of point out here. You've got them up here, here, one under there, some here, some there, here, etc. Then finally, once the mouth is dry, we're picking out all the teeth, and we're doing it in black Templar. To point out, you've got little sort of, I want to call them toenails, you know what I mean. You've got these little spikes on the end tail here, nice and simple, and then on this side you've got a single spike coming out here. So get all of that done, and we'll move on to the next step. Next up, we're going to create that unique patterning on the slug. It is really, really straightforward and really simple. It's more complex than it looks. So let's talk colour first. We are taking Creed Camo once again, we are not thinning it down. This is going to be in its purest form. So nice and simple. Obviously I've painted it already, but I'm going to kind of demonstrate with a brush exactly what I'm doing. I'm using an old battered small airbrush. As you can see, paint's gone into the ferrule. It's got its uses, but it's not got its greatest uses that you'd want. And this is why it's absolutely perfect. We're going to take the Kree Camo, literally stick it right up into there and just paint that whole section. Essentially bring it down. When you get to this area here, using the box art as reference, I'm not copying it exactly, but I'm taking Kree Camo on the brush and I'm literally doing random lines, dots, squiggles, completely random. The more random it is, the better it will look. Follow the box art in the sense of guidance of where it goes, so roughly down to there. This whole section down here has nothing, so we leave that blank. You've got it up to what I would call almost like the nose area, where it does go slightly down there, but no further, etc. So just take your time, section by section. Don't worry about drying lines. We kind of want it to add to that effect. Now, let it completely dry, and when that happens, I'm going to do an overall shade for all of these colours, just to sort of very gently tie them together in a nice, neat way. So, let that happen. Create it as random as possible to make it look good, and we'll move on to the next step. And next up, we're going to finish off base coating our slug skin. It's really simple. Every colour we painted so far is going to get this next step, and it is Mortarian Grime. We're not filling it down, we're applying it in its purest form. We're just simply painting it straight over everything we've done. Essentially, why? Because it just adds more definition to the colour already there. It's very subtle as well as a shade paint. In that sense, it doesn't really alter or do much, but it will subtly enhance, just enriching everything we've done. And yeah, it just looks good. That's how I feel. So, same way, in the sense of how I've told you already how to apply the skin, take it section by section in the exact same ways, let it dry completely. The slug for now is completely done, and we're going to move on upwards. And next up, we're going to start working on the throne. So to begin with, we've got this brown cloth, and we've got the wood. Two separate browns, and we're going to start with the cloth first. We're going to talk colours. It is a mix to actually really match the box art perfectly, and it's quite a cool mix, this one. It is a 1-to-1 with a drop of Lahmium Medium. The Lahmium Medium is not affecting the ratio. It is literally just a little drop to keep the same colour, but just add a little bit of support in the flow. So, take Snakebite Leather, and in a 1-to-1 mix that with Garaghak Sewer. We're literally taking the best of both of these browns, combining it together, and it literally just creates the box art colour in a nice, simple way possible. Lahmium Medium will help with the sort of drying line time. Obviously, if you do take time, you will get a little bit, like you can sort of see here. It's not the end of the world. It is fixable, especially when it comes to highlighting, and we are going to apply a shade later on. Now, before we move on to the darker brown, I just want to talk a bit of theory behind this. It is very, very doable for the assembled. I've had trouble because, geniusly or stupidly, whatever way you wanted to call it, I've got all these Nurglings in place which most people won't have. The Nurglings are not part of the kit, so they do make a bit of a challenge getting the brush around. But I've managed it easily, which means if they're not there, it's easy to paint. Things to just be aware of: you got to get under the the insides under here. They are visible. They need painting too. Every area is really easy to reach, should I say. This area here, don't worry if you get paint on, because it's metallic detail. So just paint on it. Same for the vials and stuff. I'm going to be base coating them in metallics before we get that sort of box art colour, so we can afford to be sloppy and messy. So get that done. If you catch it on the wood, it's not the end of the world. So essentially I had a whole sort of splodge mishap here on the wood. You cannot notice it because I've gone for a very dark toned brown here, and this is Cygor Brown. So nice and simple, just base coat it over all of the wooden detail, let it dry, and we'll move on to shading those details. Next up, we're going to shade that Cygor Brown and that Snakebite Leather mix with the Garaghak Sewer. Nice and simply, I want a brown that's going to enhance it, not overwhelm it, and give it a more warm, organic feel. The colour here is Reikland Fleshshade. Nice and simple, just paint it straight on. We don't need to thin it down. Just keep an eye for pooling here, 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 and here. This is where I've noticed it the most. Obviously, we want it to settle nicely into the recesses. We don't want it to excessively drain with gravity, especially as it is a completely straight slope from there. So, get that done, let it dry, we'll move on to these red details. Next up, we're going to start focusing on these sort of rope-like tassels that come at the back here. Nice and simple, we are creating a mix. I want a reddish brown. The easiest way to do this is to do a 1-to-1 of Flesh Tearers Red and Cygor Brown. Mix that together, and nice and simple, just start at the top on each section, work your way down. I'm using a small layer brush here that's a bit battered, a bit old, but enough where we've got consistency of not hitting the other, details. This one is a lot easier to do. It's got a lot more leeway in the sense that it's spread out. Just be careful as you approach this area here. Turn it to the front. We've got some different leather coloured straps here, holding up all these bells and trinkets. You've got bigger straps and little tiny thin ones. For the bigger ones, paint them in Gore Grunta Fur. Have a nice decent amount on your brush. Don't overload it, but if you get enough, you'll have a nice sort of recessed colour of the Gore Grunta Fur, creating that nice sort of three-tone transition of base coat, sort of shade in the centre and outer edge highlight. For our smaller little ropes and bits of leather, we're just painting it in Wyldwood. Nice and simple. So get that done. We're going to need to let all of that fully dry, and then we're going to move on to the metallic structure of the base. So we're continuing our way up the model. This next bit is about the metallic details. This is the dark silver, as well as shading it too. This is the whole sort of structure of the frame, as well as some other bits. So let's talk the colour. Nice and simple. We're base coating in Iron Warriors. Once it's completely dry, we are shading with Drakenhof Nightshade, and that is including everything that I've painted in this little clip here. So you've got the entire frame, obviously what you can see on the front. Don't forget underneath. Now my Nurglings do make it hard. However, what I would say, if you haven't built your Festus model and you're just building it as it is, minus the Nurglings, it is reachable in all areas. It kind of looks like you need to sub-assembly it, but honestly, you can absolutely reach it, and I've done it with all this extra stuff in the way. So I mentioned the frame. We've got the cauldron, nice and simple. You've got the support structure of the chair, and what I have done, even though it's technically his cloak, which I'm going to do in purple, you've got the sort of inside. It's very hard to see here because of the shadow, in the sense that there's no light getting into it. But you've got this inside of the cloak that's right there underneath the chair in that central part. Essentially, if you're not getting what I'm saying, it's this part of the cloak here on the underside. I've base coated it in Iron Warriors. Nice and simple. The reason being, it is a dark coloured paint. It is so hard to even see, even, I'm not talking about with the light box. If you're looking at it from other angles, it is very hard to see. So just getting that dark paint in is just going to create this dark shadowed effect. Essentially what I'm saying is, we haven't got to worry about what we can't see, so we might as well just slap a bit of dark paint in case there's any white scar, and you don't want that to show through, obviously. You've also got the armrests, nice and simple. This little section that's in the middle is made of wood, so we obviously want to avoid that. So just take your time as you get around to the areas around Festus, because we obviously don't want to spoil that, and again, with all of our cloth detail, we don't want to spoil that too. But just take your time, be patient, let it all dry. Do the Drakenhof Nightshade, and that again, as I remind you, is over every single detail. And we'll move on to the next step. Next up, we're going to finish off base coating all of this midsection, that sort of throne platform that I've been talking about. Obviously the Nurglings will do at the end. So to begin with, let's talk about those bells. Now, in the box art, when you look at it, it's a silver that's slightly off. It's almost like it was bronze, but they've tinted it down to the silver end in that sense. I want pure bronze. I just want a bit of colour and differentiation between that sort of silver throne and the details here. So the colour I've gone here, and again this is matching pretty much most of my army, Screaming Bell. Nice and simple, just paint it over, because the beauty here is we can add verdigris, we can add different colours later on as well with rust and stuff to create a real medley of colours. So it makes sense for me just to have something different that matches my army. So just base coat that all on, let it dry. Now obviously I've shaded it, we'll come to that in a second. Moving on from that, we're going to focus on the cauldron, and all of that slime is as base coated in Nazdreg Yellow. Nothing really to it, just make sure obviously you catch every edge, being careful obviously as you go around. We don't want to catch these details, but the bottles, don't panic, because we're not base coating those yet, even though they are done at this stage. do the Nazdreg Yellow first, worry about the bottles later. Now, once that Screaming Bell is dry, we're going to take Agrax Earthshade in its purest form. We're going to use it to shade those details. We're also going to use Agrax Earthshade to base coat the bottle tops to give that kind of cork effect look. And if you've done Stone Mud, I've applied it over the entirety of the base too. Finally, in this section of colours, we're taking Iron Hand Steel, and this is to base coat all of the bottles. So let the Nazdreg Yellow fully dry in case you have caught it onto the bottles, and then just base coat every single bottle that you see. There are bottles up here. We will be doing them in the same colour later on, but there's no point worrying about that now. I'm literally just working my way up. Essentially, for now, this section is done. I'm not doing the bottles yet, because once they're done, I'll paint and do all that water detail inside them towards the end. So get that done, let it all dry, and then we'll move on to the next step, which will be Festus. Next up, we're going to start working on Festus, as well as this sort of back part of the throne, so to speak. So we've got 3 colours here. Let's go in them in order. To begin with, we're going to take Reikland Fleshshade. This is going to be for Festus' skin tone, as well as his victim. Nice and simple. This is going to act as an underlayer. We're going to tint it, become more plagued later on. But for it to register as skin tone, we need that skin tone in place. And this is just subtle, gentle, and perfect. Moving on from that, we're going to take Skeleton Horde, and this is for all of our bone details. So nice and simple. You've got exposed parts of the skeleton and the victim here. So foot, ribs, skull. You've then got the skulls here on his staff, and you've got this sort of bone structure that's holding up the frame, as you can see. Now let the Skeleton Horde dry, and then it doesn't matter if you go over the ropes for this bit of the Skeleton Horde, because once it's dry, we're going to take Gore Grunta Fur, and this is for all of the leather strap detail. So there's nothing on the victim. You do have it on the staff here, holding up these skulls. I'll show you this side. You've got this sort of almost slightly invisible section, just where my finger's pointing here, from the top bit to the middle. But it is there. It's just very subtly sculpted where it's hanging down there. You obviously got the sort of mummified victim as well that's on the back there. We've got the straps, and you just got so many different straps. You know, literally, as you can see it. So I'll give you a little 360. It's easier to see it in this sense rather than the box art, just because everything else is still in white scar. So take your time, get that done, and we'll move on to the next step. Now for my Festus colour scheme, I want it to be a homage to the original colour scheme. That original resin model, I've already done a tutorial for it, but I want it to be a cross between that original as well as the new one. So what I'm going to do is base coat the tentacle in the same way. It's quite bright, it's quite colourful, but then I'm going to alter it from the original tutorial, where I'm going to shade it in Gutrippa Flesh like I do to tint and sort of really nurglify and plague the skin tone. So to begin with, let's focus on the tentacle. When you base coat it, it won't look like this. It's going to be quite bright, quite vivid. When I'm applying these paints, we are not letting each one dry first. We literally apply the first paint, wash the brush, add the second paint, blend it in, wash the brush, go to the third, go to the fourth. So if you've seen a tutorial before, you know exactly what colours I'm using here. To begin with, Targor Rageshade. Take this in its purest form, paint this front section here, roughly to where my fingernail is here. Wash your brush while it's damp, obviously clean, move to Coelia Greenshade, apply it on, but apply it over the Targor Rageshade. Essentially, not overloading your brush, it's just going to blend the two colours in together while it's wet. Bring your Coelia Greenshade roughly to where my fingernail is. Wash your brush. Once it's clean, take Poxwalker. Exact same method, paint it over the last section of Coelia Greenshade, and then move your way up the model to roughly where my fingernail is. Wash your brush. Once again, exact same procedure. This time we're taking Druchii Violet. We're painting it over the Poxwalker just at the very end, and then bring it all the way up to pure Druchii Violet to finish off this tentacle. Nice and simple. Let that completely dry. Then we want to add a plague tone effect to our skin. If you've seen my other tutorials, you know exactly what I'm going to do here. The colour is Gutrippa Flesh, and this is why we had Reikland Fleshshade before, because it acts as an undertone. Our eyes register it as skin. This on its own is just green. but we need it to be a glaze. We don't want it too strong, so take 1 part of Gutrippa Flesh, and in the ratio we're adding 2 parts of Lahmium Medium. Nice and simple. This is going over all of our Reikland Fleshshade, and when the tentacle is dry, it's gone over the entirety of the tentacle too. So we've got a very diseased looking Festus, very ill looking victim. Let that dry completely. Once it's dry, we've got some pus spots, and I'm keeping it to the classic Festus scheme of adding, pus rather than green. There's plenty of greens that you could go with, but I'm going classic here. Nazdreg Yellow, just the same as before. Paint it into the pus spots. Now, while we've got this paint to hand, we're going to focus on the chair that he's sitting on. Nice and simple. I want a wood tone that looks a bit sort of ill, is the best way to describe it. After all, it's Nurgle. So take 1 part of Nazdreg Yellow into a palette and mix that with 2 parts of Wyldwood. Nice and simple. We don't need to add Lahmium Medium here. We're literally just base coating it straight on. Nice and simple. There's only a small area to do, and there's plenty of recessed detailing to let it pour into. And it just creates this really odd brown that just really works nicely. It's ever so slightly different from that brown. It stands out perfectly. So get all those details done, let them dry, and we'll move on to the next step. Next up, we're moving on to a whole host of details, starting with the cloth, and I want it to match the rest of the army. So nice and simple. If you've seen the other videos, you know exactly what's coming here. 1 part Leviathan Purple, mixed with roughly 3 parts of Sigvuld Burgundy, and just a little drop, roughly 1 part, if anything, of Lahmium Medium to help with the flow. Nice and simple. I've base coated over all of the cloth details, including our victim. It does give a rich royal look, and it's a perfect contrast when you think of all of that sort of horrid putrescence that we see in the model. So get that done, take your time, just be careful as we get near to the skin tone. I've used a small airbrush throughout. Moving on from that, let's focus on our victim. He has got this coral-like growth on the head, matching the rest of the models that I've done. The simplest colour here is Briar Queen Chill. It is base coated over the white scar still. I haven't painted over that or made any mistakes, so make sure it's pure white scar, otherwise you won't get this look. Next up, we're taking Blood Angel's Red. We only need the tiniest amount on our small airbrush, and this is just to base coat the eye of Festus as well as the eyes of our victim. This gives a sort of horrific look. Moving on from that, we're going to take Berserker Bloodshade, and this is to add sort of that blooded damage rawness to the skin tone. So this is on Festus, around the tentacle, chin, pus spots, and in our victim. Nice and simple. What we're going to do is feathering. So we're going to base coat it on, wash your brush, and while the paint's still wet, and while your brush is damp, but not completely sodden, so literally wipe it off on a paper towel, but it's still damp, pull the paint out towards the area you don't want it to be, and you're creating a natural blend. Otherwise, you'll just have a very stark drying line where you place it. So apply feathering details to all those areas. So since I've painted on the chin, feather it upwards, stomach, paint this whole area here, feather it outwards, paint it all around the tentacle, feather it outwards. Nice and simple. Moving on from that, we're going to base coat with Agrax Earthshade, and this is going to be all this kind of detailing here. I don't know what to describe it as, so I'm just going to point it out. Here, here, you've obviously got the mummified victim here, you've got this little trinket here, nice and simple. While we're focusing at the back here, we've got this little cauldron pot, and we've got a whole lot of intestines that are being sort of, we don't want to know what they're doing, but taken out of our victim here. And we're base coating with Volupus Pink. Beauty here, avoid the skeleton horde. Don't worry about the cauldron. Just literally sort of ram an old brush in and just get as much as you can into the area just to base coat all that section. Finally, for this part, we're going to focus on this kind of fly emblem. Now, it's a kind of a brown with a tint of yellow, and what I've gone for here is a 1-to-1 mix. It is skeleton horde. However, I've mixed that skeleton horde with Ironjaw's yellow. It is a pure 1-to-1 mix. Mix it in a palette. No thinning down with Lahmium Medium. Just literally apply it straight on. Start from the top. Work your way down. It's bright. It's bold. It stands out really nicely. So, get that done. Our next step will be the staff. Next up, we're going to base coat the staff, and depending on what angle you look at, it's either brown, it's either green. It's quite a very sickly looking look that I really like here. There are 3 paints involved, and I need to tell you those first before I explain the process. Snakebite Leather, Wyldwood, and Mantis Warriors Green. So 3 paints. First of all, take a 1:1:1 ratio and mix that in a palette. We're going to take it section by section and base coat. Nice and simple. That's the easy bit. Keep those paints though open, as in like you can clean your brush and then just add more to, because what we're going to do is just take random amounts. We're not literally painting on, we're splodging while areas are wet. So you could take Mantis Warriors Green, splodge here, take a bit of Wyldwood and splodge there while it's wet, and it will just stretch apart and blend. And we're just literally mixing it just to create the most awful, in the right way awful, looking colour. It doesn't look right in the sense it looks absolutely perfect for Nurgle, but it just, I mean, what I'm feeling here is it looks absolutely disgusting and sort of weird, and it's absolutely perfect for Festus. So as a reminder, you're creating a 1:1:1 ratio with Snakebite Leather, Wyldwood, Mantis Warriors Green, base coat a section, then clean your brush and just take random colours of your choice of that same, paints as individuals and just dot them randomly around, just to create a very unique look. In a sense, yours will be different from mine, but it will be very similar. It depends what colours you like. You might want it more green, like I did, or you might want more browns. In a sense, the Snakebite Leather will create a sort of blend like this, whereas the Wyldwood will be a lot darker. So, take your time, get that done. We'll move on to the next step. Next up for Festus, we're going to focus on the metallic details. So, before we get on to that, I want to point out the garden shears. They are obviously wooden handles. I've painted them in the exact same colour as the chair. I did at the same time, I just forgot to mention it. Moving on to that next step, which is the metallic, we are going to keep in the same consistency. So, Iron Warriors for a dark silver, the metallic scaffolding structure, the cauldron, you've got the belt buckle grips, you've got this structure on the sort of fly emblem, so you've got the eyes and what I'd argue is a mouth that goes around, and you've got the chain going around his body holding this medallion. Nice and simple, Iron Warriors being the base coat. Moving on from that, the bottles are going to be done once again in iron hand steel, the same as we did for the ones down here. Simply base coat those. Not doing the bottle tops, those are going to be Agrax Earthshade. Again, we're just keeping the exact same theme as we've done down here. We're then going to take Screaming Bell, and this is going to be for our bronze details. There's only 4 here. You've got the emblem on his chest, you've got the emblem here, you've got an emblem here, and the bell here. Nice and simple. Now we need to let all of our metallic details dry before we shade them, obviously. First of all, we're going to take Agrax Earthshade, and before we go to metallic details, we're going to focus on the fly. This central column here, from the top to the bottom, has a different tone when you look at the box art, and this just helps create that different tone while keeping the overall theme. Nice and simple, no thinning down, start at the top, work your way down. You've also got a little bit at the back there too. Keep the Agrax Earthshade to hand, and we're going to shade all of our bronze details that we've just painted. Moving on from that, we're going to take Drakenhof Nightshade, and once again this is only for the Iron Warriors details, the dark silver. We are not shading those bottles, we're keeping them in Iron Hand Steel in its purest form, because we'll work on those later on. So, get that done. All we've got left to do is base coat the Nurglings. Next up, we're going to base coat all of our Nurglings, and I'm doing them all the same colour. Yes, it deviates from the box art, but it's bright, it's vivid, it's my style. So to begin with, let's talk the base coat colour for the skin tone. I'm going to separate it. We'll focus on these two individually, the colours for them first, and then I'll talk about the other colours if you opt for my sort of style of adding extra Nurglings on, because they've got slightly different features. So to begin with, create a 1:1 mix of Mantis Warriors Green and Gutrippa Flesh. That is our skin tone colour, nice and simple. Base coat that on. avoiding horns, avoiding teeth. For our horns and teeth, nice and simple, skeleton horde, that's across all of the Nurglings. And then finally across all of the Nurglings, dotting the eyes the tiniest amount once the green is dry, Blood Angel's Red. Now this applies the next part to the Nurglings that are not part of the kit. This is from the main Nurgling kit. You've got some of their tongues out, nice and simple. I painted them green to begin with, and just go over it with Kroxigor Scales. Our other Nurglings that are from the Nurgling kit do have pus spots, so Nazdreg Yellow. And finally, you've got one with an open wound, you've got one eating goodness knows what, that kind of style, and I'm adding that in Volupus Pink. With that done, our model is battle ready. Festus looks absolutely fantastic, just as he is. We could just add some tufts, we could leave it there, but we're not going to. He is a centrepiece. So, in the next few steps, I'm going to take it section by section, just as we did at the beginning. So, slug, frame, Festus, backpack, and we're going to add highlights. Next up, I'm going to go through all of the highlights that I've done. Essentially, for me, this model is already complete. There are a few extra things I'm going to add, and I'm going to say ignore the base for the moment. I'm going to come to that towards the end. It just needed a lot of time to dry, so I've done it first, but pretend it's not there. Let's focus on the highlights, because that's the most important part. There is a lot. It is all done by hand, apart from the sternum mud, so it takes time. However, it's worth it for a big centerpiece model like this. So let's get straight into it. First of all, for dry brushing, like I said, sternum mud, if you're copying that, Screaming Skull. Now keep this paint to hand, because we're also going to use it for edge highlighting. This is going to be for all of our Aggaros Dunes part of our slug, which isn't much, but it does go around. You've got the insides, etc. You've got all the horns, all of the bone details, the skulls, etc. So take your time, pick all those out with Screaming Skull. Moving on from that, let's focus on our slug. We've got two different green types. We've got this brighter green at the bottom, and then when we did the Krieg camo patterning, it's obviously darker at top. So you want two different colours to distinguish that. To begin with, we are taking Deepkin Flesh. This is for all of the lighter green details of our slug. I've also done it on our Nurglings as a skin tone highlight. I've also done it on the tentacle. Nice and simple. So it's time consuming. However, by doing it this way, it creates some real bold, vivid highlights that really stand out nicely. And obviously with the light box, it's a lot brighter here than it would be in normal daylight. For a darker skin tone, I still want it bright, keeping in sort of theme of how I do things. However, I don't want it as bright as Deepkin Flesh, so I'm going to its base coat form, which is Iron Rack Skin. Essentially, this is the companion piece to Deepkin Flesh. So this is for all of the sort of top areas where there's real strong edge highlights that you can do. Don't need to go too crazy on that one, because obviously we don't want to ruin the pattern. While we've got Iron Rack Skin to hand, I've also used it as tiny edge highlights for the entirety of the wooden part of the staff. Nice and simple. Moving on from that, let's focus on our pink highlights. This is going to be for all the Volupus Pink details that we see on the slug, as well as the actual robes that we've done in that purple and burgundy colour scheme. So first of all, we are going to edge highlight with Emperor's Children. On this one in particular, it's going to be very, very strong and bright. A bit too vivid, but don't worry, we'll tone that down towards the end. Once we've done all that edge highlighting, as you can see, we're then going to take Fulgrim Pink. And this is just going to be little spot highlights on the sharpest corners. Now, like I said, it's going to be very bright, very vivid. We need to tone it down. So we're going to take one part of Caribou Crimson, create a mix of 2 parts of Lahmium Medium, and nice and simple, I've applied that over all of the cloth detailing. I've also applied it over all of the sort of flesh just to provide a bit more depth, and literally it just takes that sharpness back ever so slightly, still keeping it there, still keeping it visible, but just much more compatible with what we want. Moving on from that, let's focus on our black details. There's not many, it's all the teeth, nice and simple, and you've got these little black points down here too. First of all, we're going to highlight in Dawnstone, just classic edge highlighting, and then especially on the teeth, especially on the spikes at the end here, we're just going to do spot highlights of Administratum Grey. So as a reminder, spot highlight, you're literally dotting the sharpest point where light hits the most. Moving on from that, focusing on our Nurglings, some of them have tongues. Obviously this applies to those only if you added them. However, you do have these green spots that we did in the Kroxigor Scales. So just a very simple edge highlight for the tongues, spot highlights for all of these spots with Gorse Blaster Green. Finally, finishing off our Nurglings, we're going to just dot the eyes ever so slightly with Lugganath Orange. Next up for our highlights, let's focus on these red sort of tassel-like bits that are coming down here. Nice and simple, it's an edge highlight. For this colour, I'm going with Squig Orange. Very similar to the box art, where it's kind of orange, kind of red, is a perfect cross in between. Moving on from that, we are going to highlight all of our wood. Now when you do this, it's going to be very strong, in the sense it's a bit bright looking here, but it's not so much in daylight. But when you apply it, it's going to be really bright. When it dries, it just looks right. So you've got to trust the process here. Just simple, thin edge highlights of Deathclaw Brown for all of the wooden details. For our cloth detail, which is all this cloth down here in the brown, we're doing it in Balor Brown. Nice and simple, edge highlights going all the way along. Now there are some spot highlights, but we'll come to that in a minute. Next up, focusing on the coral part that we did in the Briar Queen Chill. I'm just doing a little edge highlight of Blue Horror. You don't need much at all, it's only a tiny little area, but it's still worth highlighting. For all of our skin tone, this is including our victim, as well as Festus. We're doing edge highlights and spot highlights of Flayed One Flesh. Edge highlights following the curvature of the muscles, spot highlights on things like the knuckles, the nose, that kind of stuff. Next up, we're taking Carrick Stone. Now, first of all, we're just going to use this as a spot highlight. This is for all of that Balor Brown that we just done. Essentially, where we've got the sharpest corners, like you've got down here, spot highlights there, in those sort of middle parts of those long bits where light's going to hit the most. Just doing a tiny little edge highlight there too. Keeping this paint to hand, we're going to edge highlight the wooden chair that he's sitting on. We're also doing all of the Gore Grunta Fur leather strap details. Nice and simple. There's a lot to do. Just be very careful. Just take your time. Just be patient. Don't have too much paint on your brush. Moving on from that, we're going to take Pallid Witch Flesh. Now, this is going to be for our, what I would call the fly emblem. We've got all of that kind of Agrax Earthshade detailing. Little edge highlights there. We've got our mummified victim. Nice and simple. We've got the bottle tops too. So I've done edge highlights there. So just be careful with this one. Obviously it's quite strong. We just want thin edge highlights, especially on this one, because we don't want to go over the top. Equally, we want it to look good. Moving on from that, we are taking Wraithbone. Now I'm using this as an edge highlight, and again, this is going to be very strong, so we don't want too much on our brush. This is for our Nazdreg Yellow slime that's coming out of this cauldron. Now, it is going to really overtake if you go too much. Even if you've only got a little amount, it's still going to be quite strong, so we want to kind of tone it down like we did with Festus's cloak. So here, we're just taking pure Cazador Yellow, once that Wraithbone's dried, and just apply it all over. Keeps the Wraithbone in place, but it just ties it in nice and neatly. Finally, we've got our metallic details, nice and simple. Our bronze is highlighted in the Sycorax bronze. And finally, all of our silver details are highlighted in Stormhost Silver. Now, at this stage, that is every single edge highlight. The model is complete. However, there are textures we're going to apply next. We need to do the bottles as well. And we'll come on to this slime feature that I've created down here. Next up for Festus, we're going to add a whole lot of textured detail and effects. That's going to include the base, but we'll cover that towards the end of this little segment. First of all, let's focus on verdigris and stains, which sounds absolutely lovely when you talk about Nurgle. We're going to focus on the bronze detailing first. If you've seen my tutorials before, you know exactly what's going to happen here. It is 3 parts of Briar Queen Chill mixed with 1 part of Nighlac Oxide. Now this 3-to-1 mix essentially turns this into a contrast paint, gives you control, gives you power and flow without it staining and smearing everywhere, but at the same time it still keeps the concept of it being a technical paint and what it's meant to do in the exact same colour. So just apply as little or as much as you want to our bronze detailing. Now when you look at the box art, the silver has a similar effect but not in that colour tone. So we're going to do something similar, and it does kind of work. Take Kroxigor Scales. You could alternatively go with something like a Coelia Green or Pterodon Turquoise, but just to reduce the amount of paints that we're using, we're keeping to the same one. So take 3 parts of that, and once again, mix it with 1 part of Nighlac Oxide. Exact same principle, however, we're turning this into that colour, essentially. So it becomes a sort of verdigris staining effect where we're just randomly applying as little or as much as you want again to all of our Iron Warriors silver detailing. Again, it just makes it really stained, Nurglified, if that is a word, and it just looks awesome. I've applied both as well to the base, just randomly, just to add extra Nurgle effect and detail. Next up, we're going to take blood for the blood god. This is just a small amount on our garden shears and little saw there, just to show the brutality of Festus. Now finally, we're going to talk about this lump of absolutely disgusting glue on the bottom. It is Nurgle's rot, but not in the way that you will know. Essentially, I'm creating a little bit of Nurgle's rot, and I'm mixing it with epoxy resin. Now, this will be liquidy. You've got to stir it first, add a bit of Nurgle's rot to it in a small little container, and you've got to apply it quickly. The way this reacts with the epoxy resin, it's going to harden and become clumpy like this in a couple of minutes. You don't have long. So just create a small amount. It's up to you. The idea here for me being it is a giant slug. It's going to leave an absolute putrescent trail of slime, and it's not going to be like normal slug slime. So I've added the Nurgle's rot, and as you can see, put it this way, it reminds me of toddlers and their noses, and it looks absolutely grotesque and horrible to look at. And the way epoxy resin dries, it has an automatic shiny glossy effect. So it's up to you. Add the Nurgle's rot. Equally, you could just add epoxy resin to the base, and you'll have this, you know, yucky colourless effect. It's down to you, but it's a cool little trick. It enhances the model, and it just shows again the absolute horrid nature of what it is. So that's optional. That's what I've done there. You don't need too much Nurgle's rot mixed to that, and the more you add, the quicker it's going to harden and become all clumpy and horrible. But if you do apply it, just bear that in mind. You don't have long in the mixing process and application process, so just do it bit by bit, one at a time. Otherwise it does become very clumpy like this, but equally kind of works to the advantage too. And finally, we're finishing off the model with those bottles. It is very simple, keeping it really simple too. For the bottom half, obviously applying verticality. In that sense, if they're lying sideways, you're painting it sideways. If they're obviously standing up straight, paint the bottom half. Striking Scorpion's green. Nice and simple. Let it dry. For the top half, Dark Angel's green, just to create the illusion that it is empty but still a green bottle. I have then gone over it when it's dry with Hex-Ray Flame, and this is over both colours. And then finally, just to finish off the bottles, I've applied Ard Coat, just a gloss varnish, just to create that kind of shiny look that bottles have. Nice and simple. All we need to do now is add some tufts and the model is finished. And there we have it. Festus the Leech Lord is complete. This new glow-up model is just absolutely disturbingly brilliant. I love it. It's been a fun paint job. Now, if this video has helped and inspired you, then please do give it a like. Share it. This is not about being fame hungry. This kind of stuff is what helps the Warhammer community in tackling their projects. It's not an easy one. It's a great one. It's easy when you know how, but if you don't know how, it's these type of videos that help. so sharing it helps others. And if you haven't already, then please do consider subscribing. That helps the channel grow. The more the channel grows and you support me, I get to continue supporting you, the awesome Warhammer community. So until that next video, do look after yourselves and happy hobbying.